A woman vanished suddenly from her workplace. The police began looking for her, and during the search process, they interviewed several suspects, but one of them was different than the others. The police would discover that he had actually been dead for 30 years. How could he be with them in the investigation room? This is one of the strangest stories with an unexpected ending. Make sure to watch it until the end. On May 14, 2018, in Fernandina Beach, a city located in Florida, a mother named Ann Johnson called the police to report her 34-year-old missing daughter, whose name was Joleen Cummings. The mother told the police that the last time her daughter was seen was 2 days ago, and she began to worry about her since the day before when her daughter didn't go to pick up her children from her ex-husband as they agreed, meaning that the missing girl, Joleen, was divorced and had kids. The kids sometimes stayed with their father and sometimes with their mother. Moreover, that day, May 13th, was very special to her and her kids. It was her birthday. So to miss such a special day means that something happened to her. This is what the mother told the police. The police asked the mother about who was the last one to see her. The mother replied that Joleen worked at a ladies' hair salon named Tangles, and one of her colleagues was the last to see her on May 12, 2018. She and her colleague closed the salon at 5 p.m., and from that time on, no one saw her again. This prompted the police to take the matter seriously and begin their investigations immediately. The first one they decided to contact was her ex-husband, Jason Cummings. Joleen and Jason got married in 2013. They gave birth to 2 boys, and their marriage lasted for 4 years until they got divorced in 2017. Their separation was due to their continuous conflicts, and the end of their marriage was caused by several troubles. Until that time, they still had a judicial dispute about child custody. Straight away, the police thought about her ex-husband, Jason. They reached out to him and discussed the matter, and he agreed to go to the police station the day after for an interview. Then the police contacted the owner of the salon in which Joleen worked so as to take her testimony. The salon manager told him the same thing as Joleen's mother. The last time they saw her was 2 days ago, on May 12, 2018, which was Saturday. She also told them that on that day, the last 2 people who were in the salon were Joleen and a fresh employee that joined them a couple of months ago, whose name was Jennifer Sybert. Joleen and Sybert stayed in the salon until the closing time, which is 5 p.m. Then they closed the salon together, and from that time on, no one had seen Joleen again. Afterwards, the police began looking for Joleen's car. Through their system, they managed to identify the car model, its color, its plate number, and everything else about it. They looked for the car almost everywhere, but they didn't find it either in the parking lot of the salon building or nearby, meaning that Joleen took her car and left the salon area, or at least someone moved the car. This was sure because Joleen came to the salon by car, depending on everyone's testimony. The salon was equipped with surveillance cameras, but they weren't working. Then the police tried to track Joleen's phone, but it was switched off or not working either. They had also checked her bank account and her accounts on social media, but there had been no activity in the last 2 days. The police came to the idea that the last trace of Joleen was when she closed the salon at 5 p.m. on May 12, 2018. After getting all the details, the police spread photos of Joleen and her car on local media and TV stations so that if anyone saw her or her car, he could report the police immediately. The police then got more interested in Jennifer Sybert, the salon employee who was the last to see Joleen. They contacted her and asked her to come to the police station for an interview. But Jennifer said that she wasn't able to get into a police investigation due to the fact that she had an ex-boyfriend who was tracking her and trying to get to her, and she came to this city to stay away from him. She also said that he was a hacker and computer system expert, and if her name was registered in the police's system, he would get to her. The officer was astonished by the matter but didn't want to get deeper because the police at the time were focusing on Juleen's case. The officer told Jennifer that he just needed to know something, and depending on the information the police got, Jennifer was the last one to see Joleen when she closed the salon on Saturday. Therefore, the officer asked Jennifer if Joleen had done something weird that evening, told her where she was going, or talked to her about her weekend plans. Jennifer replied that she and Joleen weren't that close to each other. They didn't use to talk about their private lives. As for her behaviors, they were normal. She didn't see weird things on her, and she also didn't mention anything about her weekend plans. The officer then thanked her for her cooperation and told her that they would keep in touch in case they needed something. The officers looked up in their records any cases that Joleen might be involved in, and found out that a couple of days before her disappearance, exactly on May 9, there was domestic abuse reported by neighbors. The case concerned Joleen and a man named Jason J., not her ex-husband Jason Cummings, but a new man named Jason J. The officers were confused about this man. Depending on the report, Jason J. came to Juleen's house that night and asked to spend the night with her, but Joleen refused, which angered Jason, so they got into a fight. The neighbors heard their loud voices while fighting, so they reported it to the police. When the police showed up at Juleen's house, the fight was over and Jason J. had already left. The officers were still confused. Who was Jason J.? And why would he ask to spend the night at Juleen's house? The officers then decided to check Juleen's house. They reached out to her mother and asked her about her daughter's house. The mother told them that her daughter lived in a small house that looked like a caravan. The officers asked to see the house, and the mother told them that her husband would take them to see it. By the way, her husband wasn't Juleen's father, but her mother got married after Juleen's father had passed away. Well, Juleen's stepfather went with the officers to Juleen's small house. They were all surprised when they saw the house upside down. Everything was scattered. The drawer doors were broken, and there were small holes in the walls. The house was terrible, as if a violent fight had occurred inside. The whole situation weirded the officers out, and they immediately linked it to that mysterious man, Jason J. The police began to ask about him and investigate his background. They quickly discovered that Jason J. was actually Juleen's new boyfriend, whom she had been dating several months ago. The weird thing was that Joleen was trying to hide him from her family and friends, because most of them criticized her choices for men, which were always bad. The police tried to reach out to Jason J., but they didn't manage to. All of these events and investigations occurred on May 14, 2018, the day in which Juleen's mother reported her daughter's disappearance. The day after, on May 15, 2018, Jason Cummings, Juleen's ex-husband, came to the police station as he promised for an interview. Of course, he was considered one of the main suspects because he was her ex-husband and they had a child custody dispute. When Jason Cummings met with the officer, he straightaway admitted that there was a conflict between him and Joleen, but assured the officer there was no fight or physical violence, and denied his involvement in Juleen's disappearance. Jason presented an alibi on the day of her disappearance. He said that he was at one of his friend's houses. Then the officers asked Jason to check his phone if he didn't mind. Jason cooperated and gave the officer his phone to check the calls, messages, and everything else he wanted. Afterwards, the officer asked to check on his car. Jason cooperated again and gave them the keys, allowing them to search his car and take photos without any problems. The police didn't find anything suspicious, neither in his phone nor in his car. Moreover, they managed to confirm his alibi. He was really at his friend's house while Joleen was closing the salon on the day of her disappearance. Along with Jason Cummings' cooperation, it was clear he was worried about Joleen and wanted to know what happened to her. Before ending the interview, he himself asked the officer about Jason J., who was her current boyfriend. The officer told him that they were still looking for him. Jason Cummings told the officer that he didn't know Jason J. personally and had never seen him before, but according to his acquaintances, the man was very bad. The police knew this because they had already searched his criminal record and found out that there was an arrest warrant against him because of a parole clause violation. The police tried hard to get to him, but whenever they called, his phone would be occupied, or sometimes he would hang up on them. And when they go to his house, they don't find him. It was like he was evading them. The police thought he used to escape from them because of the arrest warrant against him. But the more he ran away, the more suspicion he got. The police have allocated a lot of their resources to pursuing and finding him. They sent search teams to his friends' and relatives' houses. Eventually, they found at some of relatives' house. They found him hidden under the bed. The police arrested him and brought him to the police station for investigation. His appearance and way of talking immediately make him a suspect. The first question he was asked was how he got to know Julian.
Can we go just kind of back to the beginning, how you guys got together, where you met?
A little over a year ago, she had like one more leg together. I went over to the party and just got together and just clicked.
During the investigation, the officer told Jason G. that they went to Julian's house and saw its state. It was upside down. The doors were broken, and there were holes in the walls. He asked him if he was the cause. Jason replied that the house was always in that state, but he admitted that during their fights, sometimes he got angry to the point that he could break some of the house's items, but he had never treated Julian violently. The officer asked if the breaking happened on Saturday, which is the date of Julian's disappearance. Jason immediately replied that it had happened before. The officer began to put more pressure on Jason and honestly told him that he was really in trouble and that he was the main suspect in Julian's case. Jason swore that he was at his cousin's house on Saturday, and the officer asked about the last time he talked to her. Jason replied that they were chatting the day of her disappearance at almost 4 p.m. This information made Jason more suspect. That is to say, if Jason chatted with Julian at 4 p.m., it means that he had talked to her 1 hour before she closed the salon. The officer asked Jason if he still had the messages on his phone.
Do you still have the messages in your phone from?
I don't have a phone, but yeah, I'm sure you can get it to the phone company, but yeah.
You don't have it?
No, sir. I seen that at my cousins or at my aunt's where I was this morning. I took the battery out of it and I said, I haven't been on it.
Jason's response was more suspicious, and the more the officer continued to interrogate, the more suspect Jason became.
You're taking your battery out of the phone? Are you afraid they're pinging your phone trying to find you?
I told you, the reason I was I got a warrant for violation of probation. I didn't want to come to jail. I didn't have nothing to do with Joleen.
I'm not buying what you're telling me.
I didn't believe in that. I said, I'm telling you the truth. I had nothing to do with Joleen being missing. I love her.
Despite all the suspicions the officer had, he noticed that whenever they talked about Julian, Jason looked worried. The officer began to think that maybe Jason had nothing to do with Julian's disappearance, and this was confirmed after the police investigated his alibi, which was his presence with his cousin at his house. Now, Jason J's and Joleen Cummings' alibis were confirmed, and no one of them was responsible for Julian's disappearance. The police had no other option but to go back to the starting point, the salon, the last place in which Julian was. One of the officers went to the salon, and when he was talking to the owner, Jennifer Sybert came in suddenly, who was the last one to see Julian. The salon owner went to Jennifer as soon as she entered and told her that the officer wanted to talk with her. Jennifer refused to talk to the officer for the second time. She stated that she didn't want to be part of the investigation. Besides, she had a weird reaction, resigned, and then left the salon. The situation weirded the officer out, but he couldn't do anything because he had no reason to stop or arrest her. Her reaction and refusal to talk made her more suspect. So the officers began to search more for her. But before starting their investigation on Jennifer, the police received a call from someone who said that he saw Julian's car in front of one of the biggest supermarkets. Straight away, the police went to that supermarket parking lot, which was almost 4 kilometers away from the salon. They found the car and searched it, but they found nothing helpful. The car was normal. The next step was to look for the nearby surveillance cameras that might have filmed the car that day. The police managed to get the records of surveillance cameras that belonged to a bank near the parking lot. Through the cameras, they managed to clearly see the car entering the supermarket parking lot. However, the police suspected the time of the car's entry. The car entered the parking lot at 1 a.m. on May 13, 2018, meaning that it was a couple of hours after closing the salon. 1 minute later, as the car entered, the police saw a man get out of the car and walk away. Unfortunately, the video wasn't clear enough to identify the man's identity, but the officers noticed that the man was going toward a gas station. As it is known, all the gas stations are equipped with surveillance cameras, so the police got the records of those station cameras and began monitoring what happened at 1 a.m. Thanks to these records, the police managed to clearly see who the driver was. It was a woman wearing black. This time the footage was clear, and it got clearer when she entered the shop and went to the counter. It was Jennifer Sybert, Juleen's colleague, who resigned from her job. With this new evidence, the police went back to the salon for a meticulous examination, and the fact that the salon had remained closed since the day of Juleen's disappearance helped them more because it wasn't cleaned and everything remained as it was. This new find prompted the police to consider the salon a crime scene. They went to the salon and sprayed a material named luminol, which reacts with blood and makes him brighten with a pale blue light. It was terrible when they found big blood spots spread all over the place. They immediately took a sample and sent it to the laboratory for examination. After the blood sample had been examined, they discovered that it was Juleen's blood. Straight away, the police began to track Jennifer. Then, they knew her address. They hadn't found the house because the address was fake. They tried to track her phone, and it worked. They managed to know that she was actually in a close area. The police went immediately to that area, and after a deep search, one of the officers spotted her car parked on the side of the road. Her car was black. The police came closer to the car and noticed that someone was sleeping inside. They knocked on the glass to wake him up, and they ordered him to get out of the car with his hands up. It was Jennifer. The officer asked her if she was in Juleen's car the day of her disappearance. She denied it, and then he said again that he didn't believe her. Jennifer then declared that she wouldn't talk unless she got a lawyer. The officers arrested her and took her to jail. At first, the police accused Jennifer of car theft because they didn't have enough evidence to charge her with Juleen's murder. Since the police began to consider that there was a crime that happened in the salon, they focused entirely on the salon building. The salon front surveillance cameras weren't working, but the police managed to find a working camera in the back alley of the bank. This camera filmed Jennifer while throwing big trash bags at 8 p.m. on the same day of Jennifer's disappearance, which means that Jennifer lied to the police when she said that she closed the salon along with Juleen at 5 p.m. Things began to look clear now. All this was confirmed when the police searched Jennifer's car and found scissors, which were supposed to be used for work. But the officers found material on it, and after its examination, it turned out that it was Juleen's blood. The police were sure that they had found the murder weapon. Moreover, they found out from a bill of purchases made by Jennifer on the same day Juleen disappeared that she bought trash bags, gloves, and a small electric saw. It was clear that they were tools for cleaning a crime scene. After making those purchases, she went back to the salon and continued her crime. She kept going out from time to time from the back door of the salon and threw the trash bags in a big trash container. Finally, the police got enough evidence to charge Jennifer, but the thing that confused them was what prompted Jennifer to kill Juleen. The officers looked for answers among her colleagues in the salon. They went to them and asked about the relationship between Jennifer and Juleen. Employees said that the relationship between them was normal at first, but it got worse over time. The employees used to notice that there was a kind of hate between them, and the reason was mostly jealousy because Juleen had more clients than Jennifer, as she used to promote herself on social media, and her work was way better. As a result, many clients preferred her. Jennifer used to have fewer clients, so this was most likely the reason for the hatred between them. Apparently, this hatred increased to the point that they used to get into conflicts and troubles. Joleen used to tell one of her colleagues that Jennifer wasn't normal. She looked kind of weird, but no one got her point at that time. However, everything was revealed suddenly when the police searched more on Jennifer and discovered what could be considered shocking. Jennifer Sybert, with her birth date, social security number, and father and mother's names, was actually a young girl who died in 1987, which means more than 30 years before. The girl died at the age of 13. The police realized that the woman they arrested wasn't only a criminal but an imposter too. This made her case way more complicated. The problem was that, until that time, she still refused to talk. The officers reached out to real Jennifer's father, who stated that he had no idea how this woman managed to get her daughter's identity. The officers assumed that this woman might have gotten the girl's identity from the dark web. But finally, on May 18, 2018, after 2 days in custody, the fake Jennifer decided to talk and began telling the officers strange things.
When you run my fingerprints through, they come up as Kimberly Kessler. I was born in May of 1968, May 9th. I am 50 years old. I've been running from the FBI for over 25 years.
Jennifer's real identity was revealed. Her name was Kimberly Kessler. Kimberly began talking to the officers about her story. She said that she was raised in Bedler, Pennsylvania. Although she was a brilliant student, according to her, her family wasn't normal, especially her mother, which prompted her to make bad friends. When she got to high school, she dropped out of school, left her house, and headed to Arizona, where she worked at a bar. During that period, she got to know a man with whom she had a strong relationship. According to her, that man involved her because he was chased by the FBI. And when she asked him why, he told her he was a bank robber and carried out many large robberies. She said that she was surprised by that. And at some point, the FBI tightened their pursuit, so she hid him in her apartment.
And then he tells me everything. Oh, I robbed these banks. And I'm like, you what? And I hid him in my apartment, and that was like kind of almost the beginning.
Jennifer stated that they got into some problems, to the point that she decided to change her name and identity and run away from him. She moved to Virginia and left him behind. According to her, he kept pursuing her and trying to know where she was. Jennifer remained insistent on the fact that she was running away from him, and sometimes she said that she was an FBI fugitive. The officers were unable to determine if she was lying or telling the truth, but all that mattered to them was Juleen's murder. When the officers tried to ask her about Joleen, she would keep evading to talk and try to continuously stop the conversation. She couldn't deny her crime because of a bunch of evidence that was against her, but she refused to talk or cooperate, unlike when she was talking about her own story. When the police realized that they would get nothing from her, they stopped the investigations and started the search process for her past. They hadn't found any evidence that proved that someone was pursuing her, neither her boyfriend nor the FBI. The FBI even denied that they knew about this woman. The police continued their search until they got to Kimberly's mother, who assured them that she hadn't talked to her daughter for tens of years. It was clear that Kimberly's mother wasn't interested. It seemed like she had abandoned her. The officers went on their investigations and managed to get to many people from Kimberly's past. Namely, one of those people named Tim was in a relationship with Kimberly, and it ended insanely.
We dated and lived together for a while. Well, Kim seemed to be the most charming, lovable person ever, and snap. She stabbed me in the chest. She bit my dad in the leg.
This man wasn't the only one. The police managed to find almost 10 people from Kimberly's past who dealt with her. The police managed to reach out to them, meet them, and take their testimony. All of those people described Kimberly as a domineering, violent, and evil woman. Imagine that each one of those people knew Kimberly by a different name. The police found out that she had 17 identities, in addition to driving licenses with different names and photos that belonged to different states. Days passed, and Kimberly was still in prison, refusing to talk, cooperate with the police, or admit her crime. Despite all of the evidence the police had, they hadn't found Juleen's body yet. Her body was mostly in the trash bags that Kimberly had thrown in the trash container before. The police tried to track the trash truck that emptied the container. They reached out to the garbage company, and they also went to the dump, where they conducted extensive searches. However, all their efforts were pointless. They managed to find nothing. A murder trial without a body is always harsher than a murder trial with a body. Despite all of this, on September 7, 2018, Kimberly was initially tried, and a grand jury convicted her of first-degree murder. The evidence against her was strong. Kimberly had been calm and quiet in the prison since the beginning of her detention, but after her conviction, she began to behave insanely. Sometimes she used to take her feces, put them in a cup, and throw them on guards. Her behaviors were literally insane, to the point that the prison administration decided to conduct a psychological evaluation in order to determine whether she was qualified to stand in court or not. Kimberly was presented to 2 psychologists, with the first saying she was fine and that she was just pretending. The second said that she might be pretending, but what she was doing was considered a disorder in itself. In the end, the last decision was left to the judge, who determined that she was qualified to be tried. For the judge, this was obviously a kind of acting. Someone who could live with different identities could impersonate a crazy lady. When Kimberly's trial began in December, she became more violent. The guards had to get her tied up on a chair. She was always insulting the prosecutor, the judge, and even the witnesses. She was a troublemaker to the point that she went on a hunger strike for a long period, and she lost more than half of her weight in 1.5 years. The prosecutor's office kept building the case against her, and despite her refusal to admit her crime, they made clear imagination of what happened. They guessed that there were conflicts between Jennifer and Joleen. Joleen began to monitor her and noticed that she wasn't normal at all. Then Joleen told her colleagues about Jennifer. She told them that she was fake and that she wasn't the person she was pretending to be. Let alone the hatred between them and Jennifer's jealousy of Joleen, because of which there was a continuous fight between them. On that day, they must have stayed alone in the salon, and maybe a fight raged between them. Probably, Joleen told Jennifer what she knew about her, and she would expose her real identity. This verbal conflict mostly developed into a physical fight. Joleen tried to defend herself, but due to Kimberly's experience with violence, she took a scissor she was holding and surprised and stabbed Joleen until she died. In the end, she threw her body in the trash. Despite Kimberly's trials to pretend the craziness, the judge, the jury, and everything knew her reality. Her last mask was finally off. Kimberly was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. We have come to the end of our story. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.